Translation. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. So I'll read Srila Prabhupada's purport, and then we'll go to our PowerPoint. It is not that devotees who are less complete in knowledge are not dear to the Lord. The Lord says that all are magnanimous because anyone who comes to the Lord for any purpose is called a Mahatma, or great soul. The devotees who want some benefit out of devotional service are accepted by the Lord because there is an exchange of affection. Out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit. And when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also advance in devotional service. But the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot live a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 4, Verse 68, the Lord says, Sadhavo hridayam bhayam sadhunam hridayam tvaham mad anyat te na jananti nahang te bhyo managapi. The devotees are always in my heart, and I am always in the hearts of the devotees. The devotee does not know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. There's a very intimate relationship between me and my pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch, and therefore they are very much dear to me. Okay, so translation again. Our Udara sarva evaite jnani tvaiva me matam asita sa hiyuktatma mam evanu tamangatim. All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. Okay, so let's switch over here to my other screen. Okay. Whoops, wrong one. Let's see, switch over to here. Moderns to... Oh, now why is it like that? I'll be with you in a moment, for those. It's not doing what I wanted it to. Let's see. Let's switch this around. I'll be with you in a moment. Well, sorry for the intermission. I really wanted to do this right. It's just not cooperating with me. Let's see. Just give me a moment here. Let's see, slideshow, monitor, primary monitor. Okay, let's try that. There you go. Okay, can you see that? The slide?
I see it full screen.
Good, good, good. Okay. Yes, sorry for the interruptions. All right, here we go. So I wanted to focus in on a few major points about this verse. The first words that Krishna uses in the first half of the pada, or the first half of the verse, is Udara Sarva Evaite. So what that means is that all of these souls, he's just named 4 of them. Those are distressed, those are in need of money, those who are curious about the absolute truth, and those that are completely devoted and in full knowledge of him and their motivation is simply to seek me, making me the goal and nothing else. So out of these four, Artha, Artarthi, Gyani, and the Jigasur, he's saying all of them, they're all magnanimous souls. Sarva evaite, certainly. But I wanted to focus in on this first word, which is udara. So udara, Srila Prabhupada translates it as magnanimous. So that means a person who is very great. Even though it's kind of turned into, you say somebody's a magnanimous soul, he's like very generous. If you look at the root word, it's not just generous. He means he's very, very great-hearted, a great person. So, because magna is just like we say maha, something great. So magnanimous is a very great personality. So this same word, we can find variations of it in different ways. Just like there's this verse, the first one that's listed here, from the second canto, chapter 3, verse 10. Akama sarva kamova moksha kama udaradi. So what that means is that no matter what kind of desires someone has, even if it's for the highest desire in this world, moksha, or for any kind of material desire, lusty desire, one who is udaradi, that means whose intelligence is very, very developed. Udaradi. So it means elevated, like an elevated consciousness. So udaradi, or Srila Prabhupada translates it as broader intelligence. So we got udara and udara. And then here's another verse. This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. We were just previously talking about controlling the mind. So back in chapter 6, we're in chapter 7 now, but when it was describing the yoga system, Krishna said, Udaret atmanatmanam natmanam avashadaye. What that means is that one should not degrade himself by the mind, but rather he should elevate himself. So it's udaret, means one must deliver. So you get this sense we're talking about something great, something higher, something that can deliver us. And then here's another verse. This is from chapter 14 of the Bhagavad Gita. Urdvam gachanti sattvasta. So that means that if one is situated in sattva, in goodness, then he goes up to the heavenly planets, higher planetary systems. So urdvam, going upward. So we got udared, udara, urdvam in this verse, udara. So that means in all these senses, something that's very elevated, high. So I wanted just to focus in on this one word initially for this presentation and see where it gets us. So I presented these slides twice in two other classes, so this will be my third time I've used the same slides. So magnanimous, something very, very great. So let's think about that. Krishna is saying that amongst all beings, those who are devoted to me are highly, highly elevated, all of them. So just how elevated are they? Well, let's just take this one universe. How populated is the universe? Just follow me here. I'll try to come to the right point. So first of all, let's figure out, as far as universal population, first of all, how many planets are there in the universe? So astronomers say that what they know is that there's about 4 billion stars, or in other words, planets, 4 billion planets in every galaxy. This is what they estimate. So if there's 4 billion planets in each galaxy, how many galaxies are there? So to explain that, there's this Hubble telescope. So what they did at one point is, because it's just an orbit in space, so they can point it in a certain direction. It just stays. There's no wind currents or anything to move it around. So they just left it in one direction into the blackness of space and left it there for weeks just to see what would happen. And after it's sitting in one spot for many, many weeks, or maybe it was even months, I don't remember. All of a sudden, they started to, not all of a sudden, but after some time, they started to get images. And of those images, when they finally developed the image, it turned out to be billions of stars and galaxies. So they estimate that just by pointing this telescope in one direction, there's approximately 10,000 galaxies in 2.5 arc minutes. So an arc minute, it's just like there's 360 degrees in a circle. So each one of those degrees is made up of minutes. There's 60 minutes in a degree. So if you take one of those minutes, or in other words, 1/60th of 1 degree, that would be 2.5 arc minutes. So what they focused in on was 2.5 arc minutes, or 1/60th of a degree. So if you took all those degrees and made a circle, it would be 21,600 different angles. But if we're talking about a sphere, which, they can turn their telescope any direction, there's more like 2 million different angles in space. So if one angle, which is filled with 10,000 galaxies, you can estimate how many stars there are. So this is how it's done. You just bear with me again. We're almost done with this elaborate example. There's 200 to 400 million planets in a galaxy. So let's average it out to 300 million planets in a galaxy, and there's 10,000 galaxies in 2.5 arc minutes with 2 million different angles. So if you multiply 300,000 planets by 10,000 galaxies times 2 million different angles, you get 6 septillion planets, and probably there's a lot more. So that's a 6-tillion is 21 zeros behind a number. So 6 with 21 zeros is how many planets are estimated to be out in the visible sky. So it's just mind-boggling. It's just like thinking of the Pacific Ocean and maybe the population of a little crustacean or something. Just unbelievable how many planets are out there. So that's the macrocosm. We're talking about the population of the universe. We're going to get back to the verse in a second. So if we keep that in our consciousness, so that's on a macrocosm. And then if you go to the microcosm, how many living entities are on this one tiny planet? Well, if you take bacteria, this is also another slide I used before, different picture, but anyway, if you take a dot, take a pen and put a dot on a page, if you look in a microscope, there are bacteria that are so small that on a dot on a page, you can estimate that there's 4 million of those living entities on one little bitty dot. So how many living entities are inhabiting this universe? You can't even conceive of it. The number is so big. So we learn from Shastra, from the Puranas, etc., that there's 8,400,000 species of life. And of those species, very few, 400,000 of them are human beings. And of those human beings, very, very few are even civilized. Most of them are just no better than animals. But of those that are actually civilized, very few even know about or aware of, or what to speak of, follow the direction of Shastra, the Vedic literatures. So those that follow the Shastras, of those that are within the Varnashram system, are very, very few, who are actually regulated, going in the Varnashram system in order for systematic elevation in spiritual life. Even if are devotees of the Lord, at least if they're following the Vedic culture, then they can gradually be elevated. And then of all of the ones that are following the Varnashram system, very, very few are actually interested in spiritual realization. And then we have this verse, Manushanam Sahasresu Kashchid Yatati Siddhaye Yatatam Api Siddhanam Kashyan Mang Veti Tattvatam. So those that are endeavoring for spiritual life, hardly anyone knows me in truth. So that's what we're talking about, how rare a devotee of the Lord is. So those devotees are classified into four. They are the Artartarti, Jigyasur, and the Gyanis. So when Krishna says, excuse me, that these are great souls, they are Mahatmas, excuse me, or magnanimous, or as is stated here, Udara, very, very elevated, compared to how many living entities are within this world, the few, the cream of the crop, that are actually trying to advance and can be considered to be devotees is very, very insignificantly small. So therefore Krishna says that Udare Sarva Evaite, they are certainly very great souls. But then he says, Gyani Tvatmaeva Me Matam, that those that are in knowledge of me are very, very special, even amongst the devotees. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, last time I gave a class, I think I mentioned this. There's this book called the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, which I tried to find it, and I couldn't find it, but evidently Yugla Rasa is saying it is around. I just haven't read it. But anyway, there's references to it by Shiva Ramaswamy and several other devotees to how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he lists these classifications of devotees, the Artas, Artartis, the Gyanis, or the Jigyasuras and the Gyanis. They fall into different classifications. And of those devotees, they have various motivations. Now, again, it's not a one-to-one correlation, but it pretty much follows that these motivations also very much influence the classifications of those devotees. So first of all, we have Bhaya. Bhaya means fear. So out of fear, they worship the Lord, or in a situation where they're in great distress, they call upon the Lord. And it's wonderful that in the in the purport, how Srila Prabhupada points out, let's just read this, that the devotees who want some benefit out of devotional service are accepted by the Lord because of an exchange of affection. Out of affection, they ask the Lord for some material benefit, and when they get it, they become so satisfied that they also advance in devotional service. So let's look at these two first motivations, Bhaya, fear, and then Asha, which is for satisfying material aspiration. So that we see in most religions throughout the world, whether a Muslim, a Hindu, or a Christian, they very much try to instill fear of God within their followers, that one has to have liberation or salvation by becoming a Muslim, a Christian, or a Hindu. Otherwise, he's going to go to hell. And then also that if you want to enjoy in this world, you simply worship God and you get the benefit. You get all kinds of material benefits for that. So Bhaya and Asha amongst the devotees, you see many of them. So we're not just talking about devotees who know Krishna as he is, but even from other religions, they may call him by other names, but they're approaching the Lord, and they become satisfied. When they become relieved from their distress, when they get money, when they get opulence, a new car, a TV, etc., then they thank the Lord, and they actually feel that genuine appreciation within their heart. The problem is that when their wife or husband or brother dies, when they get diseased and they're in the hospital, when all of their wealth is stolen away or lost, then they lose their affection for the Lord. So this is a dangerous position to be in. It's material motivation. But it is some advancement, and Krishna is saying that they are certainly udara. They're great souls, nevertheless. But then we have the more elevated. This is the Kartavya Buddhi, That's out of a sense of duty. It's appreciation for the gifts of the Lord, not just trying to exploit Him, but this is where real devotion starts. The others are completely materially motivated, and they can advance by their feeling of appreciation. But when one comes to the point when he actually understands that I am being maintained by the Lord, and I should, as a sense of duty, give to the Lord out of affection, then they're really advancing. Kartavya buddhi, and that you see amongst the Jigyasur mostly. And then we have the last, which Krishna is saying here. This is the Jnani. The Jnani is trying to develop raga. That is his motivation. He's not concerned about material gain, about getting out of distress, and even beyond just a sense of duty, he wants to go farther. He wants to actually develop love of God. So that's a Jnani. So that's why Krishna is saying in this verse, Udara sarva evaite, all of them are great souls, but Jnani tvatmaiva me matam. So Atma is the self. So Krishna says, Atmaiva me matam. I consider the Jnani to be just like my own self. So let's go to the next slide here. We know the parable from the Bible about the lost son. There was 2 sons of a very rich man, and at some point he gave away all of his wealth. He divided it amongst his 2 sons. The one son was very faithful to the father and always did what he wanted, whereas the other son was a little bit wild, and as soon as he got money, he immediately left for foreign lands, and very quickly he spent it all through wine and women and gambling, and he was left destitute with no money at all. And he was put in such a stress that he started to consider, after suffering for a long, long time, that in my father's home I would have never suffered so much. All of my father's servants are well taken care of. Even the dogs and the pigs, they have something to eat. Here I am starving. But in my father's house, maybe I should go back to him with all humility and beg that he let me become one of his servants. So he decided after a long, long time that he'd finally go back. And so as he was approaching his father's house, his father saw him from a distance and ran to him and embraced him. This son was so overcome by guilt and remorse that he fell at his feet and said, "My dear father, I've sinned before you and God. Please don't treat me like this. I don't deserve it." But the father was so overwhelmed with affection after seeing his son for a long time. He thought he was lost, that he had a big feast, and he washed his feet and had him well clothed. And then as the story goes, the other son, he came back and saw a big celebration. He asked, "What is this?" And he found out that his brother had come back, and then he was disturbed. He told the father, "I work all day in the fields, and I've never done anything wrong. I've always served you. Why are you treating my brother like this when for me you do nothing?" So the father said, in the biblical story, that try and understand. All of you are both of you are equal to me, but my son, I thought he was dead, and now he's come alive. So it's right to treat him like this. So not exactly how a saintly person, as far as the other son, would act. He was actually envious. But the point is the father. The father was very, very glad to get back his son. So the point is that the Supreme Father, he loves all of his children the same, just as any parent, even if they have a very, very bad son or daughter, never loses their affection ever for that son or daughter. However, the the son or the daughter who's a good son or daughter is very, very dear to the parents. So all of them are great, just like all the children are always loved. But one who's a good son, they're in special esteem. So much so that Krishna is saying in this verse, Atmaiva me matam. I consider them just like my own self. So I just wanted to kind of ponder on that for a minute. I'll close up in about 10 minutes here. As far as the self, we can understand from observing our own selves how dear the Supreme Self is to us. Because if our life is ever in danger, then we'll do whatever it takes to save our own lives. Because we think that we are these bodies, so if we're going to die, then we're going to try and save the self, which we think is the body. So what's the worst thing that can happen? Not just death, but let's say if somebody is a traitor, then if he is found to be a traitor, that's the worst thing that can be. For such a person, he can be tortured and scorned, worse than death. If just to be killed is one thing, but when everyone hates you, and then you have a very painful execution, what is happening to yourself? That feeling of being destroyed, your pride is being destroyed, your body is being destroyed, everything is absolutely ripped away from you. That's the worst thing because of the conception of the self. So the self is very, very dear. We see that in ordinary dealings, that if somebody loses his life, that it's the most traumatic thing that can be. So that's because the self is so dear. So Krishna is the self of the self. That's how dear we can understand to some degree how dear the Supreme Lord is to us. He's dearer to us than our very self. So Krishna is saying that for the devotee, one who is a jnani, who doesn't have the motivation of fear or wanting material things, or even the motivation of just appreciation alone, but who wants to develop raga, attachment for him, Krishna says, Atmaiva me matam. I consider him my very self. That's what he's saying here. He's so dear. So this is the last slide that I have. So the rest of the verse is Asita sa hiyukta atma, one engaged like this in devotional service, in this intimate yoga, because the previous verse, or the previous chapter, remember it ended in yoginam api sarvesham magatena antaratmana. So the greatest yogi is he who worships me in transcendental loving service. He is the best. So this 7th chapter is explaining about how to meditate upon the Lord and who can attain this. So these are the 4 types that approach the Lord, and of all of them, the most udara, the greatest is this jnani, who is asita sahi yuktatma, situated in this yoga, and then the last words are mam evan uttamang gatim. So uttama, just like udara is elevated, so uttama is the most greatest. So anuttama is the greatest gatim, destination or goal. So he's saying, Krishna is saying, mam eva uttamang gatim, that they make me their highest and greatest goal. So I have this quote here. I've heard it in different ways, but the point is that a person can be measured, his greatness or his magnanimity can be measured by the greatness of his goal. So if our goal is one of those motivations that are less, the kartavya buddhi, the asha, or the bhaya, then they're not as great as raga. Raga is an attachment for the Lord. In other words, the lotus feet of the Lord and nothing else. So if that's our goal, then certainly these words are here. Mam evan nutamangatim. We shouldn't settle for anything less, but only the highest goal of life. So I went over a little bit, but I hope that those slides were actually helpful for, like explaining the verse, illuminating this verse a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the previous screen. Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Is there anything anybody would like to add? Prabhu.
Oh, boy, I want to thank you. That was really, really nice. And the slideshow, the pictures that went along with it was very illustrative and pretty mind-boggling, like with the universe. And, you researched and calculated all the numbers and everything. And I guess me being a visual person, I really respond visually. But and the father welcoming his son home and embracing him with tears in his eyes, that was very moving. And I think it helps take one out of a little bit of the intellectualization of reading and trying to understand these verses and our relationship with Krishna into one of feeling. Of course, that's on a transcendental platform, but that was very nice, very wonderful examples. And I don't have any questions, but thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you very much for listening. Yeah, actually, there's some real nice stories in the Bible. They have to be, one can appreciate the Bible, I think, much more. Stories even from, the Quran or Buddhist literature, Buddhist tradition, they make some sense, I found. So
well, they're all related, aren't they? Like in some sense.
Yeah. I was just mentioning some time ago that I read some sort of a translation of the Attain scriptures, and those make a heck of a lot more sense. Actually, quite enlivening compared to like the King James version of the Bible, etc. I thought it was really good. So if you can find some good translations of other scriptures around the world, and I think they're helpful. So anyway, that's why I picked out that.
The Attain scriptures?
Yeah, the Essenes were before the appearance of Jesus. They were a group that used to practice celibacy, and they were vegetarians. They bathed several times a day, even though they were in the desert. And they're very strict in following their codes, and they were just basically very good Jews. So
would you be able to spell that for me?
Essenes? Oh, I'm terrible at spelling. A-S...
Actually, E-S-S.
Is it? Essenes?
E-S-S-E-N-S, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not good at spelling.
S-S-E...
If you look up the Dead Sea Scrolls, you'll find out all kinds of things about the Essenes. The Dead Sea Scrolls were attributed to the Essenes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, well, I think I just actually like this teacher in my high school religion class said that all of the religions are the major essence of the teachings, the essence of all the religions in the world are contained in the Bhagavad Gita. So, there's definitely going to be some correlations, and, that we can use. They're in pursuance of the Vedic version, I think is
Wow, that's an unusual professor to be that
Yeah,
open.
he really was. I was very fortunate that he invited the Hare Krishnas because that's how I came. How I found out about Krishna consciousness and the devotees. Srila Prabhupada.
Nice. Okay, well, thank you very much, Russell Prabhu and Kandita Mataji.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ramananda.
You're welcome.
Enjoyed
Thank
your
you,
class
Mother
very much.
Gandhari, for listening in. Boy, it must be very late where you are.
Where is she? Where?
She's in Vancouver right now,
Oh,
so it's 3 hours later there. That's almost 11 o'clock at night, right? 11 o'clock at night, wow. Or 10 o'clock. Anyway, whatever. All right, well, thank you very much, Prabhus. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Om.
Hare Om.